Do you feel like your life is stuck in cruise control? Are you excited about your current future, or is it just the one that you've come to accept? My guest today was an accountant in a big city at a big-time firm. He lived in a great neighborhood. He could see his whole future ahead of him, and it did not excite him. He made a drastic change and overcame some serious anxiety. He figured out that preparation was the key to his success and talks about how he was able to do it. Welcome to the Socks and Soul Podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Ditto. Thanks for joining us today. Let's go. Welcome in studio, my guest, Jason Munck. Jason, super excited to have you.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be in a podcast, my first time. We'll see how I do.
You're going to do great. And the reason I know you're going to do great is because you know how to talk to people.
Okay.
I've always found conversations with you to be very easy and to be very uplifting.
Okay.
And so I'm excited for my audience to get to know you. I'm excited to hear more about your story.
Okay.
When I met you, when did you move to Spokane?
It was 6 years ago last month.
Okay. Happy anniversary.
Just hit 6 years. Yeah.
Happy Spokane-versary.
I still feel like I'm new to Spokane.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, there's a lot of longtime people here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Multi-generational and everything.
So this is what I remember about your story from 6 years ago when you told it. I was making a bunch of money in finance. I quit my job. I bought a little crappy house out in the country, and now I sell blinds for a living.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
So if that doesn't fascinate you all out there listening in podcast land, I don't know what will. I think this is going to be a really exciting conversation. Why don't we start there? Tell us about what you were doing, what wasn't working about it, what was working about it. I mean, walk us back a little bit.
Okay, so a little bit of background. I studied accounting at BYU. I took a job in Washington, D.C. because that's where I grew up. I was working for a firm doing financial statement audits. I was auditing companies.
That sounds so exciting.
And these are large companies, right? This is like, people flip houses. I was auditing giant private equity firms that were flipping like multi-billion-dollar companies.
Okay.
Right. And I was looking at these deals. I was working on large publicly traded companies. I then moved over to mortgage finance. So I left that job and I started doing mortgage finance.
What years are we talking about here?
This was probably like 04 that I started through about 2014. I spent about 5 years. So I spent 10 years doing it. And the first 5 years were with Ernst & Young doing financial statement audits. And then I moved to Fannie Mae. And I went to Fannie Mae just after the financial crisis, and they were at the center of it. Everything was like melting in the financial sector.
Sure.
And they said, "Hey, we need good people." I thought it was actually a good fit for some of the things I wanted to do career-wise. I moved over there, and I was working in mortgage finance, and I was doing things like my main job was working on the information that is released to the public. Right? People are making major investment decisions based off of the information that gets issued to the public.
Sure.
So there's a lot of laws around what you can or cannot issue to the public, how you provide that information to the public. So like I would get assigned certain areas like derivatives. Like Fannie Mae was the largest purchaser of derivatives in the world and still is. And I was like working on their derivative disclosures and what kind of information do we issue to the public.
Tell us in a snapshot what a derivative is.
A derivative is a financial instrument whose value is derived from another financial instrument. So in other words,
that sounds cyclical.
It does. So let's say you're Starbucks and you want to buy coffee in Brazil. Okay. The little farmer in Brazil that you're buying coffee from will not accept dollars because they're just a little farmer. They want Brazilian reals.
Okay.
Right. So you're going to have a contract to purchase coffee in reals. Well, so that contract, the value of that contract part of that value is derived from the currency exchange.
Oh, I see.
Right?
Okay.
So as currency rates fluctuate, the value of that contract fluctuates as well.
Okay.
So so the value of that contract varies due to some other factor. And that's
as
what
inflation in both countries goes, as the economies shift in those two places, the value of that contract is also malleable that way.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it's called an embedded derivative, where you've got a contract that has a derivative component to it. Right? A pure derivative would be like an interest rate swap, which might be a little bit, I don't know if we want to get into it, but an interest rate swap is where I say, I'm going to pay you a fixed interest rate based off of the current interest rate, and you're going to pay me a variable interest rate that's like the prime rate plus 1%.
Okay.
And as interest rates change, the value of our contract will change because interest rates are now different.
Sure.
I'm paying you fixed, you're paying me variable.
Sure.
And so I was working on just crazy, weird financial stuff like that.
Did you always have a thing for numbers? When did you kind of think, man, did you like this kind of work?
Growing up, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I mean, I did my first year of college and went on my mission still not knowing what I wanted to do.
Sure.
And on my mission, I was assigned to be in the office as the financial secretary.
Okay.
And when I started doing that, I thought, this is not for me, man. The guy I replaced, like, he loved it, but for me, it was not for me at all. And, but I realized after a while, that it was something I could do. And then I met a guy who was friends with my brother growing up, and we met after the mission in the single adult ward. And he told me about accounting, and he was doing accounting, and he just kind of told me about it and told me why it was valuable and what you could do with the degree.
Yeah.
And so that's actually what sold me on, like, okay, let's do this. And BYU had a great accounting program, so I thought, okay, they got a great program. I know I can do it. And it has the opportunity to take me in the directions where I wanted to go, because I was thinking kind of corporate America.
BYU has one of the best undergrad accounting programs, doesn't it?
Yeah, when I graduated, they were ranked 3rd in the nation at the time.
Am I remembering correctly? Because I'm also a BYU grad, did not graduate in accounting, but are they the ones that were doing a 5-year and you also got your master's degree?
You could do that.
Okay.
You could do that. I decided not to, because at the time, I actually did a report for one of my classes on whether or not to get a master's degree in accounting. And I even interviewed some people at the company that I interned at. I interned at the accounting firm where I eventually worked at. And you basically didn't need a master's degree. And the people that were starting at the same time as me with a master's degree, they were getting paid $3,000 more. and the partners even told me that gap goes away after a couple of years. In other words, those master's degrees, they're going to get a smaller raise next year than I was going to get. And so eventually that $3,000 income gap would disappear. He said after 3 years, it's gone.
You would think more accountants would have done the analysis that you did.
And I got flack for not doing a master's degree. Why wouldn't you just go that extra year? I'm like, it doesn't pay for itself.
You're like, because I did this research paper while I was an undergrad and realized I'm going to
make $5,000.
Right.
If I do all this work extra years, I'm going to make $5,000. Because the firms at the time, all they cared about was if you could become a CPA. And I was able to become a CPA without it.
I see.
The people that came afterwards, most new people coming out with accounting degrees now have to get the master's, because in order to meet the state requirements to become a CPA, they have to have it.
I see.
So I was working in accounting, and ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to be involved in business. In fact, my first business was in the 5th grade.
Oh, this is going to be, were you like selling suckers on the playground or?
Totally.
Yeah.
So this was back before Home Depot and Lowe's, when you still had the neighborhood, hardware stores. Mm-hmm. And back then they sold candy. Mm-hmm. And they had, you could get candy for a penny. And I sold that for 3 cents at lunch. And you had candy for 3 cents. I sold it for 5 cents. And then the 5-cent candies I sold for like 12 cents. Because back then everybody had cash. There wasn't all this electronic payments for lunch. So lunch might cost $1.35 and the kids got $2. So they always had change at lunch. So I literally, I saved up like $5, which to me at the time was like so much money. Got on my bike, I rode to the hardware store, I bought $5 of candy. And I remember being so worried, what if I can't sell it? What if I can't sell it? All this candy, what am I going to do with it?
That's like every entrepreneur ever, isn't it?
I know. And I sold out like right away. I mean, I blew through that so quick. And I'm like, and I started with $5. I'm like, I have $12 now.
I love it.
And I thought it was like, I'm like, this is awesome.
You're like, I hope nobody figures out what I'm doing.
I know. But yeah, and I was selling candy. Like I was a candy dealer. But eventually the school shut me down because kids were in class after lunch just eating candy. There were candy wrappers.
Where did you get it?
Yeah.
Munck sold it to me.
I got in so much trouble for that. I got in so much trouble for that. But that was, so I always loved the idea of like working for myself. Yeah. And so this was in the back of my mind the whole time. But you know, the problem was in my early years and when I was coming out of college is I thought that I had to like invent FedEx or something.
Sure.
I thought I had to invent this big, huge thing and become like this billionaire. I thought I had to come out with like the next Amazon or something, some juggernaut.
I got to invent the perpetual battery or whatever.
Yeah. In my mind, that's what I thought. And so I was literally, and I was still kind of trying to come up with ideas. And I still come up with ideas all the time on like different products or, you know, for one reason or another, one product's not good, or maybe someone else has actually already thought of it first.
Sure.
But I'm always, and even now, just because somebody thought about it first doesn't mean you can't do it better.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's people that are, maybe they have a great product, but they don't know how to market it, or they don't have the right distribution, or they don't know how to make it.
I just think about all of the premium things that have come out in the last couple of years, like the cooler. Mm-hmm. Or my favorite is Hydro Flask, right? Like
a water bottle.
How does Thermos feel today? Well, you know, I mean, Thermos is the one who kind of has been making the Hydro Flask for years. I mean, I had a Thermos as a kid. You know?
You know what? I just had an idea.
And I was like, this is a thermos. It's just a pretty colored thermos.
Yeah. I had an idea. We can take Hydro Flask to the next level. We'll combine Hydro Flask and thermos. We'll take a Hydro Flask and we'll put like Dukes of Hazzard on it. We'll like brand it with like Pixar characters. Like that's the next step for that industry.
That's exactly right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I always had that in the back of my mind of like, I want to do something.
Okay, what are some of your best bad ideas? I think you probably have a couple that are really good.
Let me try to think of one.
Sorry, that puts you on the spot. But I'm guessing along the way that you're bouncing these off of McKinsey and she's like,
no, she's very supportive. She's like, I guess if you think so, dear. Like, because she sees the value too, and like, yeah, there might be a crackpot idea, but there also might be like a gem in there. So she's very understanding, but she also knows that I'm like my own worst enemy, right? If anybody's going to stop it because they don't think it's going to work, it's going to be me actually.
Yep.
Let's see, what's a bad idea? You know, I don't remember the bad ones. Those are out of my mind. One idea was some kind of thing for the back of a truck. You know, people put those truck gates on that have slatted. They're like a slotted gate.
Yeah.
And they put it on there because all those slots, you get better gas mileage than having just a normal gate. Like there's got to be some kind of way to combine that instead of having to remove your truck gate and put a slotted one in, to actually just build the slots into like a regular truck gate, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But that one, the problem with that one is execution. Once you come up with the design, how do you convince Ford to like put that on their truck?
Right.
Like you depend way too much on them.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, so there's been some idea. Another idea was, how do you connect artists with people? Mm-hmm. Not quite like Etsy, but I'm always got something kicking around.
I love it. Okay, your brain works a lot like mine. I'm always kicking around weird ideas.
The gears are always turning, like a shark. They never sleep. They're always moving. They're always going.
It's the beautiful mind of an entrepreneur. Yeah. It's a little weird and a little dark. Always coming up with something. Okay, right. So back to your story. You're at Ernst & Young, gigantic financial firm. You're auditing billion-dollar companies.
Yeah.
And at one point, finally, this thing is like...
Yeah. So I left Ernst & Young. I was working at Fannie Mae, which is a billion-dollar company.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was there, Fannie Mae, they broke the record for the most profit recorded by any company ever.
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, it was huge. It was huge.
Was that before or after the housing crash?
So here's what happened. In the housing crash, Fannie Mae actually recorded the most loss of any company ever.
Wow.
And because these were paper losses.
Sure.
These were losses on paper. They owned all of these securities that just totally declined in value. And then as the economy got better, those paper losses reversed. And so then they ended up having the most profit of any company ever.
Sure.
So in the end, it ended up being kind of a wash, but it was like staggering numbers. Like when I was there, there was an accounting rule that changed, and we added $3 trillion of assets to their balance sheet that were all like recorded off of their books. That because of this accounting change, like we had to add them back onto the books. So it was complicated stuff. But anyway, so I'm working there. In the back of my mind, I've always wanted to do something, be entrepreneurial. Never really like had quite the idea that I felt like great about. And the other thing is, my wife is from Spokane. She went to Freeman High, and she always wanted to move back here and live here. And I thought, yeah, I'd like to move there too. But every time I looked at an accounting job in Spokane, I was like,
you make a third of what you're making in DC.
Yeah, and the work itself, I would be bored in 6 months.
Sure.
So, and for me, it was more that like, yeah, it's less money, but like, if you're telling me that this has got to be my job for the next like 30 years, no thanks.
Sure.
No thanks.
Yeah.
There just wasn't anything at the time that I was really in love with. So then, I met someone that became a mentor to me, and that is where everything like shifted.
Okay.
So let me tell you about this guy. He is old enough to be my grandfather. He grew up the children of a chicken farmer. He had some great people in his life that mentored him, and he started businesses. His first business was like a Chevy dealership. At his height, he owned or was involved in 20 businesses at the same time.
Oh my word.
And he retired at the ripe old age of 35, which was my age at the time.
Wow.
Right? This guy, he retired at the age of 35, and he basically had spent the last 40 years serving missions for the church with his wife.
Oh my gosh.
And that was his life. And along the way, he started a center for entrepreneurship.
Hold on. She to me Christmas, that phone. We interrupt this to receive a phone call on our landline, which never rings.
Oh, that's a robocaller, too.
I've been doing podcasts in here for months, and that phone has never rung. Not to mention Addison's 10-year-old message. Okay.
All right. So he started at a college. He was asked to start an entrepreneurship program where he was helping young people that were getting their degrees and then going back to countries like the Philippines, and they have this degree and they don't have a job. Mm-hmm. So the whole idea was that, hey, these people going back to these countries where there's no work have some entrepreneurial education, and they can start a business, right? They can create jobs. He did that. He worked at Franklin Covey, and before that, the Daytimers, because these were people that he knew. He did all these things, and then he created this course called Launching Leaders, where he called it the Mormon MBA. Mm-hmm. And it was a series of courses that you would just go to in the evening, and it was like 8 weeks. And he was serving a mission in the area where I lived, and he was going to do this launching leaders course.
So that's why he was in the DC area.
He was serving a mission for the church.
And his mission was to teach entrepreneurism.
Among other things.
Cool.
But yes, so he was teaching this course about entrepreneurship. And there were a lot of other things. And the course covered not just how to start it wasn't really so much about how to start a business, but just kind of how to live your life and be successful in your life. And, he had his formula for success and some of the other things. And so he really put a fire under me and just kind of awakened some things that were already inside of me. And then I started kind of meeting with him individually. And so, he didn't offer it. I just said, this is what I want to do. Will you just meet with me and just give me some advice? And so that was in the summertime. It was in July. And I basically threw down the gauntlet and I said, because he was getting me charged up. I threw down the gauntlet and I said, 1 year from today, we are moving to Spokane, period. That was it. 1 year from today, we're gone. We're there.
So what were these conversations like?
Well,
that's a huge shift.
Well, and so that's the thing is when I did that, I didn't know what I was going to do. I just in something in me just said, I am doing this. If I want to do it, I have to commit.
There was something about those conversations with this guy that motivated you to the point where you had enough confidence that you could say, I'm going to create a timeline and I'm going to fill it in.
The conversations came after. I was going to launching leaders, and then I threw down the gauntlet and said, this is what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. I started working on it. And then as I was moving through the process of getting ready, that's when I said, I need to talk to this guy.
Oh, okay. So
and
you
I started
had
talking
already
to him.
said.
Yeah.
Cool. I got it.
Yeah. So, and I had no idea what I was going to do or what I just didn't know. And it's funny because, we've all had that experience where we wake up in the morning and we realize that there's something important we forgot or something we have to do today, and we worry and our heart kind of falls out of our chest for a moment. You're like,
yeah,
right. That's how I felt the next morning. That morning when I woke up, that was the first.
It was like, what have I just done?
What have I just done?
I just commit
what did
to?
I just do? Yeah, exactly.
Control Z.
Can I undo this? Can I undo this? But it's funny because, and the thing is that continued every day, every morning. That's how I felt.
You had butterflies in your stomach. You were a little bit nauseous.
Yeah,
thinking
totally.
about how you were going to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because, it on the one hand, it's scary, but on the other hand, it kind of shows the level of commitment that I had. I could have just said, well, I'm just not going to do it. This is scary. I'm not going to do it. Mm-hmm. But I was so committed to it that in my mind, and it's funny because I didn't tell anybody else about this goal. I didn't even tell my wife initially.
No way.
I just said, this is what we're doing. So this wasn't even
an out loud thing.
No, this was just in my mind. This is just something in my mind changed. And I was so committed to it that I wouldn't let myself back out of it, even though I was having these terrible feelings. And it was and this was this, I've never considered myself a person that has mental health struggles, although other people might think differently about me, but I have never considered myself to be somebody like that. And that was my first time where I thought, what is this what clinical anxiety is about? I honestly started, it was that strong.
Yeah.
That I was I think this might be. So before I could even figure out what I was going to do in Spokane, I had to figure out how to manage my fear and my anxiety.
Sure.
That was actually that became one of the first steps. And I actually learned things to do. So to manage it, so the first thing I learned was, I started consuming good content. Every morning I would read, not just the scriptures, but I would read. And so this book, if you don't mind, I can show you. This book I got from the guy that was mentioned. It was a book he suggested.
I love that you brought some show and tell items.
Yeah. So this is called The Greatest Salesman by Og Mandino. It was written in the 1960s. Mm-hmm. It really doesn't have that much to do with sales, but he weaves a very a story that is not a very finite, not a very defined story. It's specific, but the story itself is pretty short. But then he has these 10 scrolls. And the idea is that you're supposed to read these scrolls, each one of these scrolls, each scroll like maybe every day for like a week, and then go on and read the next scroll every day for a week. And the idea is that this, it trains your mind to like be positive, to be diligent, to like have all of these like traits that you need to not just be successful at a business, but just to be successful in your life.
Sure.
Right. And so I didn't have much time, but I flipped through and I found like a couple of excerpts that I thought were kind of cool. If you don't.
Oh, go. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. This is an amazing process.
Okay. So this one, first of all, each one's several pages long, but I'm just going to read like a paragraph out of this one. And this one is called, is about persistence. It says, I will persist until I succeed. I was not delivered unto this world in defeat, nor does failure course in my veins. I am not a sheep waiting to be prodded by my shepherd. I am a lion, and I refuse to talk, to walk, to sleep with the sheep. I will hear not those who weep and complain, for their disease is contagious. Let them join the sheep. The slaughterhouse of failure is not my destiny. I will persist until I succeed.
Oh man, that's powerful.
Right? Is that powerful?
Oh, man,
I mean, just reading just that little paragraph, I'm like getting fired up.
Yeah.
The last sentence is awesome. The slaughterhouse of failure is not my destiny.
Yes.
Like that is just so like, yeah, whatever obstacles you've got, you're just gonna have to punch them in the face.
It's this ongoing persistence in battle against fear.
Yeah.
And your ability as dreamers to look fear in the face and say, I am not afraid of you.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't know how I'm going to win.
Exactly.
Because you're big and ugly and hairy.
Yeah, exactly.
But I am not going to allow you to defeat me.
Yeah.
It's so empowering.
Yeah, and so I would read these. I would read these like every morning. I think you'd read them every morning and every night for like a week. And I started doing that, and that was something that helped me feel better. The other one, this one is called, this one's a good one too. This just shows how different they can be. I am nature's greatest miracle. Since the beginning of time, never has there been another with my mind, my heart, my eyes, my ears, my hands, my hair, my mouth. None that came before me, none that live today, and none that come tomorrow can walk and talk and move and think exactly like me. All men are my brothers, yet I am different from each. I am a unique creature. I am nature's greatest miracle. Right?
I love that.
Can you imagine if everybody in this world treated everyone else like a great miracle? Right? It's like one of those truths that's like, it's in front of us all the time, and yet we forget it.
Yeah.
Right? And we forget it because it's there all the time. When in reality, if it's there all the time, we should know it more deeply.
Absolutely.
So that was one thing that I did. And I found, the other thing I found was that Monday mornings, my anxiety was the greatest.
Uh-huh.
And I started to realize the reason why was because I would work hard on my preparations and doing my research and figuring out what I was going to do. 5 days. Saturday, I was like doing stuff around the house. I was doing stuff with my wife and kids. Sunday, I was going to church, working on all my church responsibilities. So by the time Monday morning came around, I had gone 2 whole days of not working on this goal.
And so you're like, no wonder I feel all this anxiety on Monday.
Yeah, like I haven't been working on it.
I've been fasting. My mind has been fasting from this positive stuff I've been pumping into it.
Well, not the positive stuff, but actually working on my goal of figuring out what business I'm going to do.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I found that working on it gave me peace.
Yeah, sure.
And it brought and I thought about that scripture, if you are prepared, you shall not fear.
Uh-huh.
And so that was like, okay, I need to like make sure I am always like working on this. Not all the time, but I'm like steadily and being persistent about it. And that really helped too. You know what's funny about preparation? I just watched that movie Free Solo. Have you seen that?
Yes.
The documentary. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's about a guy who he does rock climbing without ropes, and he decides to climb El Capitan, which is this enormous peak that nobody has ever climbed without ropes. And in the lead up to it, you know, they even talk about some of the other free solo rock climbers, and like they're all dead. Like none of them have lived past 45.
Yeah, he talks about all his friends, and he's like, all my friends are dead.
Yeah.
Us free climbers, like we don't live very long.
Yeah. So he's working on it. He's practicing on El Capitan, and he decides to make the attempt, and he goes up maybe 400 feet, and then he turns around. And he just doesn't do it. He's like, I don't know, just something in me, it just didn't feel right. It just didn't feel right. So he turned around and went back down. And then the next thing he does is he just uber prepares. I mean, he just went back to the mountain and he just practiced every step, you talk about, so his response to his fear, his feelings of unsureness was to go and just prepare even more.
Yeah, he would work on that series of moves all day.
And he had a notebook. He would write down the notebook that here, okay, you put left hand on the rocky outcropping, turn your right heel here. Yep. I mean, and it was written like extremely
and he had
detailed.
Names for all the holds and which part of his fingers were in which parts of those rocks.
And so his answer to his unsureness was to prepare more.
Yeah.
And that's how he dealt with it. And so preparedness is definitely a way to deal with fear or anxiety, is to just like prepare. And then prepare some more.
So you found that to be your case as well. If you're working on it and you're preparing for the future, that also eased your anxiety.
Yeah. So that eased my anxiety. And then consuming positive content like all the time. Those were probably the two main things that stand out today, is like what. And even now I still feel fear. I mean, that's the thing, is I am a worrywart. My wife is the happy-go-lucky one. She not happy-go-lucky, but like she doesn't worry about things the way I worry about things. Like she, you know.
And my wife is exactly the same.
Yeah.
I always joke that she has this unnatural faith in my ability to succeed. I'm like, I'll
that's what we love about them.
You should worry about this more. And she's like, I don't have to.
Yeah.
Because if you go do it, I know I'm good. Because like you said earlier, I'm my own worst critic already.
Yeah. And you know, remember too, my first job out of college was an auditor, which means my job was to try to figure out what could go wrong.
Right.
That was my job.
Right.
What could go wrong, and how do we figure that out?
Sure.
So,
I love this idea of, this is something that it reoccurs in this podcast, is feeding your mind with,
you have to.
So for you, you got this book, you got meditation and prayer, you mentioned scripture reading. Yeah. What other content were you consuming? What else did that look like?
So I was reading those, any kind of book about self-improvement. Mm-hmm. Like I just read the 5-second rule. That's what I just finished that like a month ago. Uh-huh. Which I don't know if you've read that.
I haven't.
If you want to get a little tidbit, she did a TED Talk. So if you Google the 5-second rule, you can watch it. It's very interesting.
Oh, this is the guy who says 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, it's a woman.
Then go.
Yeah, she says.
Yeah. She says, heard this.
And so the idea behind the 5-second rule is that if you count backwards 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then make some physical movement, that actually is a documented process in your mind that can get your mind to change gears.
Yes.
That if you are, let's say you're addicted to TV. And you just love watching TV, and you know that before Netflix brings on that next show, mm-hmm. you should stop, but you just can't bring yourself to do it, right? We've all, whether it's that or whether it's eating,
scrolling Facebook, or TikTok videos, or YouTube, or
you're doing it, and in the back of your mind you're thinking, I shouldn't be doing this right now, but then you keep doing it.
Yes,
right. You say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you do something physical, and that kind of helps your mind break that cycle.
Yes.
And it can be, hey, I'm laying in bed. I got to get up early to go exercise. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get out of bed.
Yeah.
And so I'm always trying to kind of find a book that is just going to be positive, just something that is positive. That is like,
yeah,
you can do this. Here's some tools. Even just reading about other people's experiences is great. But at the time, so I was reading those, and then I was consuming content just about businesses. Like one idea I had was to invest in real estate. So I was like reading books about that, I had, when I was looking into real estate, I had found another podcast about real estate investors. So I would download it to my phone. And when I was commuting into the city every day, I would listen to one podcast going in, listen to another podcast going out. If I had a phone call, the other thing is I was trying to become really efficient with my time. So if I was going to have a phone call with somebody about a business idea or something, I would schedule it on my commute, and I'd be talking on the phone on my commute, and I'd come home and I'd have dinner with my family, and I might do a couple things, and then I'd be sitting at the computer until midnight, working on whatever research I was doing on whatever business idea. And in fact, when I was living in DC, I actually did invest in real estate in Spokane.
No kidding.
I did. I bought a house for $16,000, $15,000. Yeah. I found this house. I bought it for $15,000. I held on to it I think I owned it for 6 weeks, and I sold it for like $30,000 or something.
Right. That's awesome.
And to this day, I've still never driven by that house. I've never even been to it before.
That is hilarious.
But that was one of the ideas during that year of my doing research. That was one of the things I looked into. And so about 6 months in, I decided to look at franchises, because all the business ideas I had, or that I was looking into, they were good and they had potential. But the biggest problem I had is, I need something that's going to cash flow. Yeah. All these ideas, while they're great, they're not going to cash flow for a while. I need to feed I need to buy bread.
You had a young family.
Yeah,
and you're going to move across the country.
Exactly.
And you did not want to live in your in-laws' basement.
No, I did not. So I started looking at franchises. And the last really 5 or 6 months was spent primarily on franchises. I had 5 different franchises that I had identified, and I was just calling, I would call people who owned the franchises, and I would ask them about their business. I was basically interviewing people all over the country.
Sure.
And I was taking notes. I think I still got the notebook where I have just all of these notes of when I called people and talked to them, and how much money are you making? What are the strategic advantages of your business?
Yeah.
And so because a franchise can cash flow quickly. The franchise could be a job for me today,
right?
And a true business later on, where I'm not necessarily working into it.
Of course,
which is funny that this podcast is happening today, because today I hired the last position that I was doing day to day.
All right,
she started today.
Congratulations.
So now all roles in my company actually have an employee that does them day to day, and I'm basically going to be like a filler.
So now you can do the type 3 and 4 type tasks in your business versus the 1 and 2.
That's right.
Daily
I was doing
stuff.
Yep. So my last type 1 and 2 task got hired. She started her first day today.
That's awesome.
So that's a big deal.
Congratulations.
We'll see how it goes. If she's still there in 6 months, congratulate me again.
If she comes back tomorrow, we'll know.
Yeah, that's right.
She had to deal with all day.
That's right.
So.
She was with me all day. So, no, I think she'll do great. If I didn't think she'd do great, she wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
But so I think she's going to be awesome. So sorry. So I look at franchises. Ultimately, people think window coverings, what in the world is the deal? Why did you sell window coverings? I did not.
You're like, blinds? Yeah. Really, man?
I mean, it's a big step from selling candy. Let me tell you that.
That is true. If you can sell candy to kids on the playground.
Ultimately, it was the business model. All of these businesses, I was looking at the business model. What is this business model? And what is it? And with budget blinds, it really just has it's got a secret sauce. I would ask these other franchises, what is it about your franchise that's so special? And they would say, oh, it's this or it's that. And I would say, for the $50,000 I would have to pay you, I think I could build that thing that you're saying is really unique.
Right.
And with budget blinds, I felt like for what I was paying them, they were giving me something that I could not replicate.
Yeah.
And that's and it would cash flow quickly, which it did. And it would And it would be something that I could grow myself out of. In other words, I could grow it enough that now I am not.
It's a business.
Yeah.
You own the business instead of owning your job.
Exactly. Because a lot of franchise owners, they're buying a job.
Absolutely.
They're buying a job. And I was okay buying a job at first.
Of course.
But I wanted to grow it enough so that I didn't have a job.
Right.
I don't want a job.
Right. You got a water bottle to invent, man.
Yeah. That's right. We gotta start getting that Star Wars licensing up and running so we can put that on the hydro flasks.
Yep, exactly.
So that was ultimately why I chose to do what I did. And it's funny because I went from it's funny because I did not realize how much the pride component would play into it. Going from saying I'm a CPA in a city where everyone's like attorneys and finance people and kind of these corporate America jobs to saying I'm gonna sell blinds for a living.
I can totally relate to that. You have you say the name of the firm you work for. It's one of the largest in the country.
Yep.
And even though, and undoubtedly you're getting paid well for what you're doing, there's certain status symbols associated with all this. And even if you say that you don't care about that stuff, there's still a certain sense of pride with what you have accomplished, if nothing else.
Totally.
Like I went to school, I got a degree from a great accounting program. I have a great job. I have a beautiful home. I have a great wife and family, and I am providing for my family.
Yep.
And I think that plays a huge role in what we choose to do as fathers and men, as mothers, as providers. It matters to us.
Yeah, it totally does. And I guess I didn't really go into as much on the change for the move, but what happened too was, launching leaders, and this guy who mentored me a little bit was really. It gave me the drive to pursue entrepreneurship. Until then, I was just looking at jobs in Spokane and saying there were no good jobs.
Yes.
But also at the time, our family was growing, and I was looking at where we were. I mean, we lived in a nice part of town, but we were in a $600,000 townhome with a yard that was like 20 feet square.
Oh, brutal.
And that was the poor part of the area that we lived in. That was like people who couldn't afford a house, you know. And the people there are great. We loved living there. But I felt like too that if I stayed, I already knew what the rest of my life was going to be. I already knew that I would probably stay at this company. I would continue to move up because I was doing well there and people were happy, and it was a big company, and I had a great reputation. I thought people that worked in other departments stuff, I was well thought of and I could probably move around. But I knew exactly what the rest of my life was going to be, and for some reason that just did not sit well.
But you didn't like that.
I did not. And some people would. There are plenty of people that accept that say, oh yeah, I'm going to be here forever. We're going to save up. We'll get, maybe we'll get a bigger house down the street, and our kids are going to grow up here. And this is what we're going to do. But for some reason, when I looked at that life, it felt like I was looking down a tunnel at the end of my life, honestly.
Yeah.
And I thought, I don't think that's what I want.
This isn't my story.
Yeah.
This isn't how this thing is supposed to go.
Yeah.
Mine is more interesting than this.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm the kid who sold candy at recess on the playground. I am not supposed
candy
to
dealer.
Sit, and audit billion-dollar companies the rest of my life and move up to the next position and have a bigger team, and then maybe
because that's what I was doing.
Yeah, that was the path.
And yeah, I don't know why. It just like I just thought, it's gonna be. Maybe I thought it was boring. Maybe I still am processing it, but I think I just looked. I thought, oh man, that's what the next 30 years is going to be.
Yeah, I don't think I can do that.
I don't think I want to do that. And we just wanted to live a different life. And my wife knew this a long time ago, but it kind of took this launching leaders and all these other things for me to figure out. I mean, our wives are always like three steps ahead of us.
Totally, they are. Yep.
And so I decided to pursue it more fully. I mean, even my kids, when we moved here, were like, yeah, you're around a lot more.
Oh,
I mean,
man.
When like a 8-year-old notices that you're around more, like that matters.
You did it, Dad. You did it right. I mean, seriously.
Well, and I remember when we first came to church, and people were getting to know us, and they would ask us like, "Oh, so what brought you to Spokane? You got a new job?" They always assumed that like I got a job that brought me to Spokane, and I would say, "No, we just wanted to live here," and they'd kind of do it almost like a double take in their mind, like, "Wait, you just moved here because you just wanted to be here?" Yeah, I quit my job. I spent a year researching business ideas. I researched 5 different franchises. I bought one, and I did that because this is where we wanted to live.
Now I sell blinds.
And now I sell blinds.
That's what I remember.
And everyone was like, "What is?" What? I mean, even now when people, when I tell people I sell,
thing works, man.
Yeah, like you're supposed to move somewhere because of a job. You're supposed to be beholden to your career. And so I mean, it's kind of fun now, and nobody. When people meet me and they're like, "Oh, you're the guy who sells blinds," they don't know any of the background. I'm just the guy who sells blinds.
Yeah.
I'm just the dopey guy selling blinds. Like that's fine. That's fine. You can think that. I don't care.
I just think the whole movement on that is so cool. I think the part of your story that I probably like the best is the mental health training that you had to go through in order to do a couple of things. One is
function.
Yeah, just be able to process what was going to happen, but also your ability to leave behind that pride part of it and just say, I don't care what people think about me, because really as an entrepreneur, especially at the beginning, you have to have a whole wad of I don't care what people think, because it gets used up in a hurry.
It does. And I was really surprised how much it affected me. I was very sheepish about telling people what I was going to do, especially out there.
Oh, I'm sure.
And the people out there, they were all really great. There was nobody that was like, "Oh, you can't do it. You can't." There was nobody that said that to me. So I was actually really fortunate, because some entrepreneurs really get like a lot of naysayers.
Oh yeah.
And I was sheepish, but I had like no naysayers. There were no, and at least not to my face, maybe behind my back.
You were your biggest naysayer.
Yeah, I honestly was.
Did you ever think, "Oh, they're just being nice to me. They think I'm going to fail"?
I wondered. I mean, I never really knew, but everyone to my face was very like, "Okay, great. Well, you can do it.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want because I know you." And so that was actually really great. And in fact, one guy I knew was like, he was actually really positive. He was like, "Yeah, when we lived in this other place, we knew someone who owned his own business and he did great. So I think you should do it. I think it's going to be awesome." He owned a business selling blinds too. And
I remember when I left my first job out of college, which was a great job with a great company.
Yeah.
And I announced that I was going to leave. I was going to move across the country, take a commission-only sales job. It all sounded nuts on paper. And the gal that did our advertising and some of our sales training, she was seasoned. She was older and wise. And she came into my office, and I'd been getting some flack from some other departments, rightfully so. And she came in and she closed my office door and she sat down. And I can't remember verbatim what she said, but I'll never forget what she said. She looked at me and she said, "I'm so proud of you for making this step." And I was like, "What do you mean, Elaine? Her name was Elaine Conkle. She was the nicest woman in the world, but she was very smart and very frank. And she said to me, she goes, "Every time I had the courage to leave a career or a job to go on to the next thing, it was always a step up. And you'll see this is going to be a step up for you."
In one way or the other.
She was right in every way from Tuesday. Not that it was an easy change to do.
No.
But it was so like, it fueled so much of my desire to go and win. It was really remarkable.
You really like, you can't ever put your life in cruise control. You just can't. You have to always be moving forward on something. And it doesn't necessarily have to be your career, right? I'm not saying that, but in your life and in who you are as a person, maybe moving forward is, putting your career a little bit on hold so that you can move forward with your family, move forward with your church, or move forward with, but you have to always, you can never stay in cruise control.
Oh my gosh, that is so profound.
Right? You can never.
That is a spectacular way of looking at it.
Yeah.
You cannot put your life in cruise control.
Yeah.
So which part of your life are you currently developing? What is it? What are you currently Is it your career? Is it your family? Is it your spiritual relationship?
Everything.
What is
everything?
It, man?
And sometimes I wonder if that's where I'm making a mistake, is if I'm taking on too much. But well, okay, so let's talk about career, right? So hiring another person. What's funny is when you start a business, right? You save up. Another thing I didn't mention is during that year, a part of my goal for that year was we need to save up money. We need to have enough. Oh
yeah, we need to have a war chest, baby.
Yeah, my goal was to have enough cash saved up that we could live 1 year with no income.
Yeah,
and that's what we did. When we moved to Spokane, I could make no money for a year and still live.
Yeah. If this business just doesn't work out, I got 12 months.
I got 12 months to figure
it out,
and I didn't need it.
And I have a degree in accounting.
Yeah.
I get hired anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, that in the back of my mind, I was like, I could just go get a job.
Plan B is really easy.
Yeah.
Not that I ever want to go there.
I don't ever want to go there.
But again, it goes back to that prepared thing.
Yeah.
If I'm prepared and I've got this pile of money in my backpack, I don't have anything to worry about. I can fully focus on the goal before me.
And even with all of that, I was still freaking out my first year. But anyway, sorry, I lost track of what we were.
I asked which part of your life
are you
working on?
Okay, so when you start a business, you're basically sinking a bunch of cash into something and a bunch of your time, and you don't know if it's going to pay off. And if it does pay off, it could be 6 months or a year for it to pay off, right? So right now, I just hired another person. I am sinking cash, and I will make less money in the short term,
right?
With the hope that in 6 months or a year, I'm doing better.
Right.
I'm doing better than I was before.
Yep.
So right now, that whole cycle of when my business started, I'm kind of going through that cycle again. Every time I hire someone, I'm kind of going through that mini cycle all over again, where I make an investment with the risk that it might not work. And if it does work, it's still going to be 6 months before I see the benefit of it. And so career-wise, I mean, her first day was today, and we spent the whole day just talking about technology and how I use technology and how my sales approach is and things like that. And then, I've got, so that's where I am career-wise. As far as I'm moving forward with my family, it's kind of related, right? I'm hoping that having this extra person here will allow me to be more of a father.
Yeah.
To be a better father. And also with church, right? As you know, I serve as a bishop. Our church does not have a paid clergy. It's a lay ministry. Everybody volunteers. And my role is a role that is very time consuming.
Yes, it is.
And, in that, when I think about my role as a bishop, there's all these administrative things. There's all these. If I could just boil down one thing for the people I serve at church, I would say I just want them to be loved.
Yeah. Especially right now.
Not just by me, but just for people for them to just be loved.
Yeah.
I mean, that breaks down into much more specific things, but at the highest degree, man, just have them be loved and to have a relationship with the Savior. And the thing is there's always more that we can do.
Yeah.
That's kind of, for me, that's kind of my next steps. We've got just being around for my family more, growing my business even more, making myself more obsolete in the business.
Yeah.
Not obsolete, but just unnecessary.
Totally. Absolutely.
If you got great people and you've got great processes, then they can run themselves. And people is the hardest. People is so hard.
Yep.
So hard to find the right person.
Absolutely.
So that's my next. That's kind of how I'm trying to stay out of cruise control.
I love that. I just love. I love that being kind of the crux, of our time here together, is this idea of not putting your life on cruise control, continuing to advance. I was talking to a guy who teaches for a living a couple of years ago, and he started to tell me about all of his side hustles that he has. And he's got all kinds of them going on. And he said something to the effect of, he's like, if I don't have a side hustle going on, I'm going crazy. He's like, I have to have a certain amount of my brain working on this stuff all the time. And that was his way to stay out of cruise control, because he teaches the same curriculum all the time, and he loves teaching, and he's really good at it. But the bottom line is,
it would bore him to death. Probably, if that's the only thing he was doing.
Exactly, because he was just like you.
Yeah.
I imagine at some point he was just like you, where he was like, man, I cannot sit here and do this and exclusively this. So he has all this. Some of it's just total craziness, but and some of it is paid off in a major way.
Yeah.
So I love this. Okay, we need to get to some sock talk here.
Oh, sock talk. Okay, I brought some good socks.
You brought, for those that are watching or listening and not watching, Jason he's wearing a pair of socks that he says has a story, and yet you brought socks as well.
Yeah.
So give me your sockology
I'll
here.
start. I did not understand how the sock part would work, so I figured I would have more than enough sock talk. I came prepared. I'm like, I'm just gonna overdo it, and I can always talk about.
Over in 5 minutes.
Yeah, seriously.
At least we can talk about socks.
I honestly thought, I'm like, Kelly, I think I can give you like a good 5 minutes of material you can use. Okay, so these first pair of socks are I'll describe them to people listening. They're white. They just say Medipeds on them.
They look very, very boring on the onset.
They are very boring. And if you look
closely,
closely,
your classic white crew.
Yeah,
but there's a little more than meets the eye.
Okay, so there's this netting. So the side of it is woven a little bit looser, and there's this netting because these are like a medical sock.
So from the
ankle
up, it's kind of a meshy sort of see-through-y tight kind of material.
So you can. So I did have ankle surgery. Actually, about 4 months before we moved to Spokane, I had ankle surgery. So I had all that going on that year too. It was unbelievable. And so the thing I love about these socks is that I can put like an ice pack in there to ice so that's why it's this loose mesh, is so that you can put medical things in them. So you can ice it down. So these socks belonged to my wife's Uncle David. Uncle David had Down syndrome. And as you know, when people with Down syndrome get older, they have lots of medical problems.
Yes.
And last year, he passed away. And when they were going through his things, somehow my wife came and said, "Here's these socks from Uncle David."
Oh my gosh!
And so these are my Uncle David socks. I got maybe like 2 or 3 pairs.
I love this.
And so so these are basically these are medical socks from an old man with Down syndrome. But I think about Uncle David when I wear his socks. When you
put them on, you just feel happy.
I channel his inner spirit.
I love it.
So
okay.
So those are my Uncle David socks.
I love those socks. Okay, those passed my sock test.
These socks are more interesting. These are cycling socks, because when I was in DC, I cycled a lot, and these are Bike MS.
Yeah.
Bike MS cycling socks. So they just kind of represent to me.
Is Bike MS the brand?
So Bike MS, so MS is multiple sclerosis, and Bike MS is a charity that puts on bike rides.
Ah, okay. That's it's got like a spinal cord woven through the logo.
Oh, yeah.
Unless that's a tire track.
Yeah, I think or a tire track could be both.
One of each.
So
okay.
So the way these bike rides work is they organize really awesome bike rides. Like if you're really into cycling, like they'll do a 100-mile bike ride, and it's really well managed. The course is awesome, but in order to participate, you have to raise money for the charity.
Cool.
I think the minimum at the time was $400. You had to raise $400. If you couldn't raise $400, you couldn't ride.
Okay.
So you had all these guys like me that were into cycling that just wanted to do the ride, but we had to raise money. And so so every year you had these cyclists like me and my friends that were like, "Oh man, I haven't raised $400 yet for the charity yet. What am I going to do? Am I going to have to pay it myself?" Which is totally lame. I mean, I look back now, that's totally. But you talk about not going in cruise control, and actually something in that book is they would set their goal. These guys, my friends, would set their goal at $400, and then they would struggle to meet it.
Uh-huh.
And I realized,
you're like, why don't you make your goal $1,000?
It's funny. That is exactly what I did. I changed my goal to $1,000. I said, I'm going to do $1,000.
Brilliant.
I'm not doing any of this Mickey Mousing around.
Yep.
If I do a number that's so big, I just won't care. The $400 won't matter.
That's right.
Because I'm making my goal so much bigger than that. And you know what's funny is I usually exceeded the $1,000. And so I got the socks. So this was my thing for my friends is I'd wear these socks. I'm like, see, I raise more money.
This is
what the big donors wear. They get these socks. And in fact, I was one of the top 100 people to raise money for it. And so not only did I get the socks, but I actually got a T-shirt, and the names of the top 100 donors were on the back of the shirt. So my name's on the shirt. I mean, I was like 99, but you were
on the shirt, man.
I was on the shirt.
Somebody once said to me, they're like, "Listen, Kelly, it's better to shoot for the stars and drag your feet on the tops of the trees, than to shoot for the tops of the trees and drag your feet in the mud."
And I was about to say the same thing, because in that book it says a similar thing. It says, I would rather aim my arrow at the sun and hit an eagle than aim my arrow at an eagle and hit a stone.
Oh, yeah, totally. Aim higher.
Yeah, aim higher, because then if you fail, you still did pretty good. These socks are just some cool, interesting church socks. And I like to wear these at church. I have a couple other pairs that are colorful like this, because then it's my kind of way of making things a little more interesting at church.
Yeah, sometimes, we wear our suits and our ties, and sometimes the ties can be fun, but the socks, you can do a lot with the socks. So those are kind of red, white. They got some colors of blue.
The pattern is Argyle.
Checkered. They're Argyle. Yeah,
they're Argyle socks with a very bright red, white, and blue pattern.
But they got a lot of color to them. Yeah, that's more up my alley for sure. I like those.
And then these work socks I've actually never worn.
Are they something you give your employees?
No. Last year, a man I go to church with passed away unexpectedly. And I was just helping clean up the house. And somehow I ended up with a 3-pack of these socks. And the 3-pack just sits in my closet. And I look up there and I think about him.
As a reminder of the good man that he was.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's all it is. I don't know if I'll ever wear them, but they were his socks. And the pack, it just sits in a brand new pack just on my shelf.
I love it.
I just look at them.
That's awesome.
So
that's great sockology.
Okay.
You are by far the most prepared to talk about socks that I've had. I forgot to tell Sandy Zimmerman that we were going to talk about socks.
She probably wasn't even wearing any.
She was super mad at me, but she posted about them later.
Oh, okay.
I wore these. These are probably one of my favorite brands. These are Stance socks. They're just really, really comfortable. But I wore them because
they look nice.
They remind me of blinds.
All the horizontal lines. All the horizontal lines.
They've got tons of horizontal lines, and they're a couple different colors. But I brought you a pair of these.
Oh, no way.
So, when I saw these, I was like,
oh, that is so cool.
These remind me of like a grandma's tapestry in her old Victorian home.
I love it.
So they're blue, and they've got kind of these kind of cool old looking style to them. They're Stance socks.
Almost like a Rorschach pattern on it.
Yeah.
Oh, that is so cool. Thank you. I love them.
So those are my gift to your sock collection there.
There is so many things going on with these socks.
Yeah.
There's lines and color. Oh. I feel like this is channeling like so many different things in here.
It could be an analogy for our podcast and all the things we talked about.
Yeah.
And when you put them on, you can just think about staying out. I mean, if those don't scream "stay out of cruise control," then I don't know what does.
That's right.
And so those are my gift to you, and thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. Wow, these socks.
Yeah, they're awesome.
I mean, it was nice talking to you too, but these socks are...
It's probably worth your hour just for those socks.
Just for the socks.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what you're worth,
what my hourly rate is,
but it's probably like, I got those on sale.
I can see you left the tag on.
I did. I left the tag
$5.99.
$5.99. So I don't know what your hourly wage is, but it's probably around $5.99 plus tax.
Plus tax.
So yeah. Jason Munck, where can we find you? How do we find you?
Oh boy. So personally, I'm on Facebook. I would say if you want to reach out to me and like maybe have a conversation about something, I think that our personal relationships is so important. We don't give enough time to it. I mean, that's where, I mean, you saw several different cases where like major events in my life were triggered by me talking to somebody.
Yeah.
Me just talking to somebody and having and hearing them and having it resonate with me. So, you know, if I can do that for someone else, I'd be happy to. So Facebook is just look for Jason Munck on Facebook.
I'll put your link in the show notes.
Yeah,
and if they want to connect with you that way, they can.
Yeah,
you own the budget blinds in Spokane Valley and in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
No, I own the budget blinds in I cover basically the Idaho border west to like. Okay. So I cover the valley and I cover like the South Hill of Spokane.
Okay.
And there's another guy who does Coeur d'Alene.
Okay.
Which we get along with great. He's a great guy too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if you need window coverings, I don't know if this is really the right forum, but
totally, absolutely.
Coverings, but
Jason sells window coverings. If you need window coverings, he's your guy.
You know what's funny? Just driving here down the street, I saw 2 brand new homes that don't have anything in the windows, and I'm like, when I'm done, I'm gonna go knock on the door and give them a card.
There you go. I like it. That'd be great.
Never stop.
Absolutely. I'll also put in the show notes the reference to the book. And any other books, you know, that you think would come to mind that should be on people's lists in terms of how to feed themselves, you know, good stuff mentally. Yeah,
so I read that one. Another book that comes to mind just now that I read that was really good is called The Richest Man in Babylon.
I love that book.
I mean, that is it's short, but it's so good.
That book was given to me by Tim Cobb, who I had on a previous episode as a gift years ago. And
it's a great book. You know, it talks about, it talks about a couple of things we didn't talk about, which is the value of hard work.
Yep.
But 2, also the importance of like, you need to be able to save up a little bit to get going.
Yes.
Like if you are constantly living hand to mouth, like you're not going to make it. You know, if you want a seat at the table, you got to bring some of your own chips.
That's right.
And
being a wise steward.
Yeah,
is
exactly.
A huge part of that.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Like you can't manage your own money, but you want me to give you money to do a business. Like, no thanks.
Right. Dream on, buddy.
Yeah. Because I've had people come to me with an idea or this or that, and I'm like, you don't have 2 nickels to rub together. Like, what are you talking about?
Exactly.
Like show me that you can save up a little bit of money and use your own resources wisely, and then I'll consider giving you some of my resources.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a good one. No doubt.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was a great time.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. I hope you've been uplifted by this podcast. I feel like I learned such important lessons. I realized recently, this last week recently, that I feel like I'm putting on my own masterclass. After talking, you know, after my podcast last week with Jethro Jones, where he talked about wanting to learn stuff, so he brought people into his podcast so that he could learn that stuff from them directly. I really feel like there is great wisdom in that. So I hope you enjoyed this. Jason, again, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It was great. It was great to visit. It's great to just talk. You know, always have a good time talking with you. You're easy to talk to also.
Thank you.
You're a swell guy too.
I'll take that to the bank. Thanks everybody for joining us. We'll see you next week on the Socks and Soul Podcast. The Socks and Soul Podcast is a production of Ditto Film Media. If you enjoy this content, be sure to give it a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Join the conversation on Facebook at Socks and Soul Podcast.